So, did this new Ferrari suspension work or not? In today's video, we're going to analyze in detail how Ferrari's filming day went, what are the feedbacks that the Maranello team brought home. Let's look at the impressions of the drivers, but not only that, we also need to see Marginet's words on Lewis Hamilton, Vasseur's words on Leclerc because he has leaned on his favorite from Monaco. We also need to hear what Patrese says about Verstappen and Kimi Antonelli and the situation at Mercedes. Before we begin, please leave a supportive like and let's dive into the details. Yesterday, a crucial chapter of the Ferrari season closed at Mugello with the 200-kilometer filming day. Just under 40 laps, they were used, yes, to shoot some images, but above all, for a technical check that Maranello defines as fundamental. The day opened with Charles Leclerc and closed with the semitones, who have equally divided the kilometer allowed by the regulation. At the center of the work is the new rear suspension, one of the details that could, or at least should, change the behavior of an SF25 so far too complicated to fine-tune. The real goal of this development was very clear: to better control the ground clearance and open the famous operating window of the single-seater. Translated, more stability in braking, less nervousness in cornering behavior, and more predictable tire management. In Maranello, they rethought the geometry of the upper suspension arms, modifying the attachment points and the chassis, and also revising some internal elements. It's not a radical change, even to the naked eye, but of a technical reliability that aims straight at solving the most annoying limits of the car. After the work, Loic Serra, the team's technical director, was also in the pit. And it's true, Leclerc admitted that he didn't perceive any dramatic changes to the steering wheel. However, the telemetry told a different story. The modification works, and according to the data, it has been promoted. Now, however, comes the most complicated part. Because at Spa-Francorchamps next weekend, between July 25 and 27, there will be a sprint weekend, and finding the right balance with the little time available will be a real challenge. Ferrari will bring the revised suspension to Belgium to finally compare it in race conditions. Will it really be the long-awaited turning point, or just another small step in a season that continues to live on hopes and questions? Mugello gave the first answers, now Spa will give us the rest. Obviously, as it's a day film, Leclerc and Hamilton drove with the base setup and demo tires, unable to modify the setup during the session. Also, because 40 laps are really few, that's why the real potential of this suspension will be better understood at Spa. But certainly the team has chosen a setup closer to the ground, which therefore allows to better exploit the Venturi channels and go faster in the fast bends. The new floor and suspension were observed at Mugello. There is less risk of wearing out the plank after the disqualification of Ferrari that we saw in China due to excessive wear of the plank. This is a small update to improve that condition, but what has really changed on the SF25? The intervention aimed to enhance control over ground height, broaden the single-seater's aerodynamic window, and optimize aerodynamic load management at various speeds. The aim is to lessen bottom stress and optimize tire usage. In short, Ferrari has had to deal with an unstable and difficult to handle car since the beginning of the season. The team has always tried to balance the aerodynamic load with dynamic control, often accepting painful compromises in terms of pure performance. This change may impact the game theoretically, but Spa will be the true test. Ferrari continues analyzing Mugello test data to improve their performance in the second half of the World Championship. While Ferrari's technical side is important, we must also consider the human aspect of the team.
Because Charles
Leclerc comes from a bitter weekend. He finished in 14th position at Silverstone and made a self-criticism that caused a lot of discussion. In fact, the Monegasque did not go beyond 6th place in qualifying at Silverstone and then finished 14th. This isn't the first time Leclerc has faced scrutiny. The repetitive team radio after the 2019 Baku qualifying mistake is memorable. This time, those close to him, like team principal Frédéric Vasseur, are also speaking out, outlining a clear profile of their driver. Charles has a great ability to self-reprimand, but he sometimes does it excessively, Vasseur explained. I appreciate a driver who can say it's my fault, because that way he doesn't send the team off track. Drivers are human, they make mistakes like everyone else, and admitting it is important. Vasseur knows how much healthy self-criticism can make a difference in a work group, but he also knows that, if overdone, it can turn into a boomerang. The risk for Leclerc is that of wearing himself out internally just when clarity is needed to face the most delicate moment of the season. We've long maintained that Leclerc is a highly skilled, fast, and talented driver with many strengths. However, it happens that he is too self-critical, and this can be useful at times because it spurs him to do better and he never rests on his laurels. However, at the same time, this excessive self-criticism could wear him down internally, and he shouldn't put all this pressure on himself but should also share it with the team.
to suffer.
The less pressure spikes you have on the track. Because it's true, the biggest responsibility is on the driver, but there's a whole team behind that works on it. And it's important for the driver to create an environment within the team that doesn't make them feel the pressure that's externally. This is crucial. In Ferrari, world champions like Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton in Mercedes do it. And it's a small piece that could make him an even more complete driver, so we'll see if he also improves in this aspect. Because this is a criticism that comes from Vasseur himself, who has a great relationship with Charles, but he knows what his strengths and weaknesses are. Let's hear Marginet's thoughts on Lewis Hamilton. I hope Norris and Piastri will battle for the World Championship until the end of the season. Realistically, we are fighting with Mercedes and Red Bull for second place in the Constructors. An important result nonetheless, which rewards the teamwork and the commitment of our drivers, Marginet said. He also mentioned Hamilton's challenges, who, net of a victory in the sprint race in China and some brilliant insights, has had a challenging first half of the season. According to the Spanish collaborator, the 7-time champion is simply facing the normal process of adapting to a new technical human environment. Changing teams after 12 years is never easy, and it's not just for Lewis, but for all drivers facing this kind of change. It takes time to understand the car, the working method, and the team.
In Austria,
He probably had his best race, excluding the sprint. And then he added that I have the feeling that Lewis is adapting better and better. But the real question is whether Ferrari will be able to provide him with a competitive car. And the same Mark says it, we can be as optimistic as we want about 2026, but until we put it on the track, no one can say for sure. And there are several points that affect Hamilton's ability to adapt to Ferrari, certainly age and reflexes. Obviously, Hamilton is now over 40 years old, he's a different kind of driver, and so he is facing a new phase of his career, as Alonso has also done. He has a habit, another technical philosophy, that of Mercedes, with which he has lived for 12 years, with a completely different corporate culture. He must adapt his driving style to the vastly different SF25, which wasn't developed according to his needs. For this reason, his focus is on 2026. Because a top-tier champion like Hamilton has realized that this season must be forfeited. It's futile to overinvest time and resources on this project. Instead, focus on preparing the project optimally and complying with the new regulation. Also because from next year, many rules will change. The single-seaters will no longer develop load from the bottom. Certainly much less, and this is a point in favor of Hamilton, who has never gotten along well with ground effect cars due to the driving style they require. It's a basic instability of the rear axle. But let's hear what Patrese said about Toto Wolff and the decision he has to make about Verstappen. If Verstappen goes to Mercedes, Wolff should keep Russell. Antonelli still needs to grow. Riccardo Patrese stated that, as confirmed to Toto Wolff, the issue should be resolved by the end of the summer break. But there is no shortage of complications. In fact, Verstappen's ironclad contract with Red Bull until 2028 and Max's personal sporting demands make the negotiation anything but straightforward. And Riccardo Patrese has stated, if he could, Max would go to Mercedes. I don't think he's happy at Red Bull, especially after the Horner case. Inside, there are serious problems, and for a champion like him, the risk of staying in an unstable team is too great. And Patrese recalled how Mercedes was able to exploit the regulatory change in 2014 to dominate Formula 1, and he believes that the Stuttgart-based team is once again in the right position to excel in 2026 thanks to their work on the next-generation power unit. This year, Max made a difference with just a few victories that no one expected. He reminded me of Senna and Schumacher, drivers who won even without the best car. But for him, this is not enough. He wants more. Patrese Russell has proven he deserves the spot. Dr. Wolff has always been loyal to him, and Kimi Lantorelli, as promising as he is, still needs experience. Patrese stated that if he had to select a partner for Verstappen currently, he would pick Russell, as Kimi is talented but still needs to learn. George is already on another level. Not on par with Max, but he's closer. I disagree with Riccardo Patrese. I believe Kimi Antonelli is still key to Mercedes' plans. One could have thought of maybe making him debut this year in Williams, then leveling him up from 2026 by bringing him to Mercedes, but this did not happen. Toto Wolff put him directly in Mercedes to give him experience, rightly starting from a top team. So one cannot think that Kimi will be discarded by Mercedes to make room for Verstappen and keep Russell. It's much more likely that Mercedes will choose Verstappen and Kimi as a pair within Mercedes for 2026. I agree that Max wants to leave Red Bull because it's an unstable situation, but Kimi remains central to Mercedes' project, and there's not even the option to downgrade him to Williams or even park him at Alpine for a year and then bring him back to Mercedes series. Because it would be too much of a downgrade for Kimi, who only had 1 year to prove his talent and has done so at least up to this point in the season. Also because there's no love lost between Russell and Verstappen. And keeping them within the same team could create a complicated management of the drivers internally. So it would be more work for Toto Wolff to mediate between two hotheads while Kimi gets along better with Verstappen. And this is an aspect that a team principal takes into consideration. When you have a dominant single-seater like the 2014 model, the World Championship battle is primarily between the two drivers on the same team. You need to have the ability and have two drivers who respect each other without having difficult situations to manage. Sending Kimi to a satellite team would also compromise his growth and trust in the team. So all these points make me think that if Verstappen were to come to Mercedes, he would replace Russell. What Patrese said seems a bit too risky to me. Honda is considering leaving Formula 1 as they prioritize electrification according to their statements. If Mercedes and Audi are said to be in favor of maintaining the current rules, strong with a potential technical advantage, the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile has begun considering lightening certain parts of the regulations, both to contain costs and to ensure a sports product up to par. We're talking about e-fuels, which are synthetically produced with renewable energy identical to fossil fuels for use and storage. And we're also talking about biofuels derived from biomass, so biodiesel and bioethanol, more complex to produce and more expensive. However, both solutions involve very high costs. It is estimated that a liter of e-fuel could cost up to $300, a value incompatible with Formula 1's required economic sustainability. Honda is set to officially re-enter Formula 1 in 2026 as the exclusive supplier for Aston Martin, has let it be known that it does not appreciate a downsizing of the hybrid components of future power units. Koji Watanabe, Chief Executive Officer of Honda Racing Corporation, reiterated that the Japanese manufacturer's commitment in the top series is tied to maintaining a strong electric content in future power units. A vision in stark contrast to that of the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile President, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, who wants to bring back the V8 engines as early as 2029. And so this decision will depend a lot on the elections of the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile President, which will take place at the end of the year. Because if Ben Sulayem were to be re-elected, he would have to keep his promise to bring back the V8 or V10 engines in the short term. And this goes against the wishes of Honda. This means that Honda either adapts to the current situation or leaves Formula 1. We may see a repeat of 2015 with engine performance varying based on each manufacturer's focus on the electric component. In my opinion, Honda is a bit too rigid in changing decisions. We know what the Japanese philosophy of Honda is, and changing plans in progress is not a welcome thing. However, currently internal combustion engines are more favored than electric motors and are also more appreciated by Formula 1 fans. So switching to a V8 or a V10, in my opinion, is the right choice for the Formula 1 business. Compared to keeping electric motors, Honda may like these features, but the public doesn't. Share your thoughts on the topics discussed in the video in the comments. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay updated on all Formula 1 and Ferrari related news. See you in the next video from Rastro Tuto.